Yes. So you're doing this. This is a master's under Kate Heal, is it?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm doing it's Kate Heal's my primary supervisor because I'm based out of Edinburgh. But then she's co-supervising with Alison Duffy, who's also
Of course,
as
yes.
well. Yeah. And so essentially, what I'm trying to look at, I kind of got into it originally because I'm very much interested in green infrastructure and SUDs and urban forestry. And I kind of started off with kind of how can the design be optimized and, what are the opportunities? And it turns out that there is plenty of design and there's good points already made there. And the bigger problem is actually getting it implemented. Yeah. So that's kind of what my dissertation is going to focus on, kind of the current governance structure as it stands now in terms of ownership and management of these public assets in Edinburgh, and then kind of how can the implementation be optimized.
Okay.
And that's the part, the social science part, that I'm still navigating. And so I'm going to start off with some pretty general questions for you, but then if you can pick up on things that are definitely more important, then
right. I'm just conscious of time as well.
Sure.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. So first off, for the role of the private firm, starting off with MWH, what do you perceive as the role of the private engineering firm in delivering and maintaining these public assets?
Primarily, I'm afraid our role is to serve the client. If someone comes to ask us to do some work, we will do that work as the client sees, as the client prefers, let's put it that way. And the client may simply say, we want some SUDs in there, we want some green infrastructure in there, and we'll design it. Or they may say, we are required to attenuate to the 100-year return period. Do your best to do it in as little space as possible. And that may compromise what we want to put in as green infrastructure, but it's serving the client as they want, so the remit would be what the client says. However, a lot of the time, there's flexibility between doing anything you like and you have to do that, and there's a sort of determination between those two boundaries, and we will say you could do this or you could do that. So our role is to serve the client, that's the bottom line. But within that, we will attempt to design as best we can, and from my own personal viewpoint, that would have a large amount of functionality in it, which would include all the benefits that green infrastructure can serve as well. However, as I say, there may be constraints within that may say you take a small footprint as possible to deliver this, or we're not concerned about plants or whatever.
And so in terms, is that when you're saying clients, you're saying developers? Is that mainly?
It could be our biggest client generally. For the company that we are just now, it's a water company, so it would be a sewer, a water or sewerage undertaker. Right. In Scotland, that would be Scottish Water.
Right. And are you seeing Scottish Water or any of your clients trying to push for that little bit of extra flexibility? Is the general trend to be as conservative as possible, or do you see people looking for amenity value?
I think there is a slow growing awareness of the need for green infrastructure. They don't. It depends who you speak to in Scottish Water and their knowledge. If Barbara Barbarito came to us and said, put in something, then Barbara, I know is aware of SUDs and green infrastructure and would be quite flexible. However, if it's within the confines of a sewage works, I'll put a swale into a sewage works, one of the big ones in Glasgow, and there was very middle of a sewage works, where can you put a swale? But we squeezed it in, and they seem to be quite happy. They're actually installing it just now. That the chap who passed there is responsible for it. So there's a growing awareness, I think, of these things, but they don't come and say, please put in green infrastructure. Right. They'll say, well, okay, we'll see what you come up with then, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Other clients would include the energy sector. We've got a big job down in Dunbar, putting in a power station, a energy from waste power station. and we have yet to design the drainage and other landscaping around that, but we will be attempting to get as much softer infrastructure in there as is feasible.
Now, what do you perceive, kind of moving right along, what do you perceive as sort of the key policy drivers as they stand now? I know that there's the Water Environment, Water Services Act, then that led to the Controlled Activities Regulations, and then Scottish Water kind of went through a knowledge transfer partnership with Abertay, making a very robust vesting process. But so now, in terms of SUDS or urban forestry, does MWH do any work with urban forestry? I'm assuming we're mainly talking about SUDS.
Mainly talking about SUDS. It was certainly urban forestry. No, we have a landscape architect, and actually we're doing surface water management plan in Glasgow. We've done one already in the city centre, and we're doing another one. And we will, within that, as a means of installing components to manage flooding, look for green infrastructure out within that. And you know, it depends. The city centre was very difficult to install stuff there because it's slap bang in the middle of town, very urbanised. But we come up with proposals that install green infrastructure in it. The one we've got now, which is it's on the south side of the city, we've got probably a bit more flexibility to install green infrastructure. It's all still more residential, and there's a main road that runs through the centre of there's a kind of keyhole shape, and there's a road runs through the middle of that shape. But within that, we think we'll probably be able to install some bits and pieces of green infrastructure. For example, street trees down an avenue,
right.
And the ability for water storage and flood management within the tree planters or something.
So you can kind of combine the two into something.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, I mean, it's flooding, but how else can you do it? Do you dig a hole and fill it with water? I would say not. There are better ways of doing that. You can dig a hole, fill it with water, and put trees around it, make it a nice shape, and get multifunctionality.
So then, in terms of, and even in comparing kind of Glasgow to Edinburgh, in terms of policy drivers, what have you found to be the most influential, and could they be strengthened in your perception?
As we speak, they are being strengthened. Both, well, to the best of my knowledge, both in Glasgow and Edinburgh. I was at the CSGN, the Central Scotland Green Network Forum, which was on Tuesday. You should have gone to it, actually. I should have let you know about it.
I saw about it like 2 days before it happened, and I emailed them frantically, being like, "Hey, is there any openings?" And it was full. Yeah.
I could just sneaked in anyway.
I probably should have. I should have just gone.
Anyway, within that, there was good talks from different people and individuals, someone from Philadelphia, someone else from Edinburgh, and the Edinburgh lady, Julie Waldron, if you come across her.
Yep.
Julie is a landscape architect, works for the City Council, and she spoke of, is it guidance or is it policy that they have?
I think her title, just on the program, was guidance.
Yeah. Right, okay, right, good, yes, you saw that then. And is it draft or is it I can't remember. It's coming. It's fairly new, and they've got. They gave 3 examples: 2 developments and a cycle path that are trying to get installed. Every time she said it, I'm sure she was saying cycle path, but and that I know Julie anyway through my SUDS background, and she's very keen as a landscape architect and biodiversity would be. On green infrastructure. So the examples she gave were very good, and that's the way the policy is going with Edinburgh. I think it's been accepted. I can't remember if it was at consultation or not, but it's the very fact that they're trying to improve on this is good. So that's Edinburgh, and in Glasgow. Glasgow, I think, have been slightly ahead of Edinburgh. They lagged behind for many years in terms of SUDS and delivering SUDS east to west. Not quite Glasgow to Edinburgh, I wouldn't say that. But, And that was generally because of the way where people were that knew about SUDS. They were more in the Edinburgh SEEP office actually. But now Glasgow has some money. Glasgow's very keen in improving the image of the city, Commonwealth Games, and other bits and pieces. So there's a growing momentum within Glasgow of increasing green infrastructure. And if you can, you should speak to someone from Glasgow City Council. I'll give you some names later if you like.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And they are very keen on green infrastructure. If you speak to a roads engineer, he's very keen in roads. Obviously, if you speak to a floodman, he's very keen in flooding. But there is a joining together now that wasn't there 5 years ago.
Now, what do you perceive has kind of gotten that momentum moving? Because it does seem like Glasgow is kind of in its stride in terms of implementing some of this green infrastructure. What elements are there that you perceive are missing from Edinburgh?
Are they missing? They're not as far ahead as Glasgow. I think it's down to individuals. And if there were a few more Julie Waldrons in Edinburgh, I think there would be more momentum behind the Edinburgh thing. I mean, is to say they're lagging behind Glasgow is probably unfair, but they aren't as far ahead.
And would that be individuals in the local authority and the city council?
Yeah. Yeah, it's you need to do anything in a council. You need approval, political approval, and that's at the local government level. So you need to appease the councillors themselves, who sit in committees, and they'll say yes or no to anything. So the guidance that Julie Waldron's been preparing and making and delivering, hopefully, would need to get approval, and that the committee would have to approve that. If they see that as less of a priority, they may drag their heels a little on it. If Julie's boss sees it as something that's not something that she should be spending her energy on, then it might not happen as quickly. Mm-hmm. So there needs to be the political will from individuals and collectively from the unit as the council is. So that's one thing, and the other thing is money.
Right.
That old thing.
Yeah.
And Glasgow, bless them, have won many millions of pounds in the city deal, which is why we will see fairly soon, I think, things being implemented rather than just desktop exercise and here's a surface water management plan and here you could do green infrastructure in there having studies done. Mm-hmm. They will actually start to install some of these things fairly soon. Well, they're beginning to do it already, I think, but they've got the money to do it now.
What is the mechanism for that city deal? I haven't looked too thoroughly into Glasgow, but I'm thinking that it could be a good comparison.
I don't know is the short answer. I thought it was international money. They applied for it. Glasgow applied for it. Mm-hmm. What to do is to find out where the money, or who is awarding the money, because I think now, and I may well be wrong in this, it's the Scottish Government that's awarding the money. But cities would put in a bid to promote their council to get the funding. So it's a competition, effectively. Right. And they have to put in a good enough bid to win that money. And Glasgow seems to be quite good at that now. They've done it through Commonwealth Games, they've done it through something else that happened last year, and they've done 2 or 3 other things as well. And in fact, they applied for the Green City, European Green City of the Year for 2015 for this year. They didn't get it. They came a very close second, apparently, to Bristol. But they're going ahead with their green intentions anyway. Mm-hmm. So, they're going to do that anyway. But they're very good at winning money, and I think they've learned a lot from the Commonwealth Games thing, and the one that's the city deal, which is maybe more than £100 million, I understand, but don't quote me on that. They also won, what's it called? It's an international thing. It's the Rockefeller fund that they won the money from. I forget the actual name for it, but you could Google it.
Yeah,
if you can't find it, let me know and I'll find the details for it. But they did win that, and they've won. There are 100 cities across the planet that have won it, that will win it. 100 sustainable cities is it, and Glasgow was in the top 30, the first 30 were awarded in Glasgow. Yeah,
that's
good.
Yeah.
There was 4 in the UK applied for it. I think again, guessing, London, I think Bristol, Edinburgh, beg your pardon, Glasgow, and somewhere else, can't remember. But
I can look at it.
Yeah, and if you can't find it, let me know and I'll take the details out. But they got £20 million for that, and a lot of that was about smart cities and smart components and electronics. So it was for getting signs in bus stops and letting people know transport and just making things more sustainable in the city.
Right.
So it wasn't so much direct projects for installing green infrastructure. It was more about smart cities and smart technologies, but as a component of that could install, you borrow into it.
Sure. So it's speaking about Glasgow, if you were to kind of compare that to Edinburgh, my case study, so what do you think good management would look like? So they've gotten the funding and they're delivering these systems now, but then what about long-term management? Because there seems to be a big question mark as to even once you've made them law and once you've got them built, then who's responsible for taking care of them?
That's a good question. That's the question, I think.
And it looks like there might be in the works some Section 7 agreements between the local authorities and Scottish Water, and I know that a big part of it is kind of where the water is draining from originally, where local authorities are responsible for roads and Scottish Water is responsible for the public-private curtilage. So what do you perceive as being kind of the best way to move forward with management?
That question has been asked for best part of 10 years.
And I'm trying to get between the academic question and sort of delivery on the ground. I'm trying to kind of...
it will happen, and I presume that it was Scottish Water that said that they're getting some Section 7 agreements. If you speak to local authorities, that's not the case. Right. You might perhaps speaking to the wrong local authorities, but it certainly seems to be Scottish Water's answer that they are getting some Section 7 agreements in place, but I don't think there are any yet. And I was told that they had 4 about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and then there was only one, and it was Murray Council. We were going to sign up, and then there was a flying in the works, flying not put in by Angus Council, and it was a purely, it was a legal matter, and there's a hiccup in that process. But to the best of my knowledge, no local authorities have yet signed up, and only one may be willing to. But I hope something else will come about soon. I think something will come out. What's the answer, if that's the question? One solution will be to get an authority, a single authority to deal with surface water. So there need to be a change in Scottish law to install a single entity that's responsible for surface water. And then you wouldn't have these what's theirs is theirs and what's ours is ours arrangement between local authority, roads and Scottish Water drains, curtilage. It could be just one single authority, and that has been put forward as a possibility and remains as a possibility, but is, I think, probably unlikely to happen. Other solutions, Section 7 agreements in place. The political will to do it again is necessary, and I think what needs to happen And I think what will ultimately happen is a directive from the Scottish Government to say, right, just do it, just go on with it. What's the problem? And they're kind of at that just now, but they need to be firmer with it. There needs to be, and whether that's a change in law, not to create a separate entity, but to say when it's green, it's the local authority, and when it's a pipe underground, it's the Scottish Water, and go on and do it. And the Scottish Government could act as arbitrator, perhaps, in situations. And it's being wrangled, and has been wrangled for a long time, since 2007 and probably before that, I think. And I think I was talking to someone in SEPA actually, and I wasn't talking, we were listening to a person from the Scottish Government, one of the ministers for the environment, I think. And we agreed, my ex-SEPA colleague and I agreed, that the Scottish Government needs to stamp their feet a bit and rattle some heads together.
Now, when you're saying rattle some heads, would it be that you're speaking to the local authorities, like to have the local authorities possibly commit, if not to the Section 7 agreements, commit in some sort of legal way to taking some kind of responsibility for these systems?
Yeah. The reluctance is, and your earlier question was who should adopt or why aren't these things being adopted? No, I beg your pardon, your original question was what about the long-term management? And local authorities and Scottish Water aren't adopting these things willingly just now because of the long-term burden that will be upon them. Now, a lot of that's individuals making that decision. They think that's going to cost the local authority money. We're already having money taken away from us, so why should we? And that's a plausible argument. Potholes and roads, education, and all sorts of other arguments that local authority money has been spent on. Why on earth should they take on SUDs and green infrastructure? But it's probably less expensive than they perceive it is to be. And they do have a remit to do it. If they've got a road in there, the local authority roads department is responsible for the drainage and for flooding of that road.
Right.
And they can actually install some green infrastructure as part of the flood management measures. And I think that the better educated individuals are within the local authorities to dip their toe in the water and actually say, actually, this is not as onerous as we thought it might be. And that movement's beginning. There's a lot of resistance against it, and there is resistance is the word. There's also reticence behind it as well, the reluctance to actually go forward because of the unknown. And of course, once they commit to it, they can't say, right, we'll take it on for 2 years and then you can have it back. They take it on in perpetuity. And that's why they're thinking, we'll just wait and see in this. But if the Scottish Government to come around and say, your test case, Scottish Government will take this one on, we will teach you how to do it, and we will learn lessons from that and go on and do it after that.
Almost like a showcase?
Yeah. That's just me speaking. I haven't said that. I think they should. I think they could. As a demonstration study, as a case study. I think we need these sorts of things. That's a good idea, actually. Neil, you should. I just thought that. I've been saying that to some local authorities and to the MGSDP. Do you know what the MGSDP is?
I don't.
Right. MGSDP. Metropolitan Glasgow Strategic Drainage Partnership. Okay. A bit of a mouthful. Metropolitan Glasgow. I like you write it down. It's Strategic Drainage Partnership. That's SEPA, Glasgow City Council. SEPA, GCC, and the Scottish Water and the Scottish Government's involved as well. And there's a few other people in there as well, such as Scottish Canals and Green Network Partnership and people. And it's not just Glasgow City, it's the metropolitan area of Glasgow, which would include different other authorities around it: South Lanarkshire, North Lanarkshire,
Sure.
East and West Dunbartonshire, Renfrewshire, East Renfrewshire, and I think that was it. And it's to do with flooding, basically. They have their own website. They have, it's not a great website, but they have news releases from time to time. And if you don't mention MJSDP in this study about Glasgow, about Edinburgh, then you're missing something. So you need to find out more about that. For yourself.
So there needs to be essentially an Edinburgh equivalent of the MJSDP.
It was set up in Glasgow and has Scottish Government funding and support because of a rainfall event that occurred about 13 years ago. In 2002, I think it was. And if you go on their website, you'll find details on it. Sure. It was a massive event, a very heavy rainfall event that just stalled on east end of Glasgow. And Glasgow's sewer network is Victorian and very much over capacity. And when it rains, in fact, do you know what a CSO is? A combined sewer overflow.
Yeah.
There are many CSOs that go into the Clyde, and when it rains above a certain amount, an overflow will kick in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it's been designed, so that every maybe spill 3 times a year or something like that. So that's how it's supposed to be designed. The slightest bit of rain, often a lot of these CSOs will kick in. And someone said in CPA, if I spat on the ground, the CSO would overspill. Just, they're so much near capacity. And the drainage network in Glasgow, particularly in Glasgow, is very susceptible to flooding and causing all sorts of problems. That is also the case in Edinburgh, but probably less so. If they had a EMSGP, no, if there was a, I'm trying to work out with the acronym, if there was an MESGP in Edinburgh, that would be good as well. And I guess there is that option to do, but it hasn't happened over the last 10, well, MJSDP has been in the go in 2 different guises for 11, 12 years. And it hasn't happened in Edinburgh. So it's unlikely to happen, but there should be partnership arrangements to look at that. And I'm sure that does happen. So the City Council will talk to Scottish Water, will talk to CEPA.
And not to forecast too far forward, but that could be kind of one of my main findings is it does seem to be one of the issues are kind of these institutional and funding silos that have kind of established themselves. Yeah. And so our MGSDP could be kind of a potential model for how Edinburgh could move between those silos.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Yes, very much so. Not the best of models because they're not very quick moving.
Right.
But, and it's always been my criticism of them, they've been in place for when they had their 10th anniversary. It wasn't a big party, I don't need to say that. They didn't really have much to show for it. They commissioned an awful lot of work, gained an awful lot of understanding, not really done very much on the ground. And they're beginning to do that now. But yes, that sort of model. I mean, I spoke at MJSDP last week, and it was to Northern Ireland Water. They came over because they wanted to understand what the MJSDP did, how they functioned, and could they apply the same in Northern Ireland.
Sure. And
they've done that for different parts. So they get visitors from different parts of the world looking at MJSDP. So it's quite an important one. It's something you should look into.
And what's slowing it down? What's slowing it down from kind of delivering the things that it wants to deliver? Is it just strictly bureaucracy and trying to move around the different mechanisms to get these things in place?
As I see it, the long-term vision, and they have a vision, you should look at it. It's good. They say the right things. I guess part of the vision is to establish and get people out of their silos and to join together and play together and join forces. And that happens, but only in the meeting rooms and on top of desks and not really in the ground yet, or not very much. Others would argue against that. They have done some stuff, but not very, very much in my book. They have to address the flooding risk in Glasgow. That's their long term.
And so it was almost a response, a really good response to that 2002 rainfall event.
Yeah. So MGSTP would have done their job if the same event occurred, and not to say no flooding would happen. That would be naive. But the flooding that did happen went down, happened where it should happen, and flowed where it should flow.
Right. So I'd like to go back for a quick second. You were talking about possible showcasings, and I've seen your name pop up for the 10,000 Rain Gardens scoping study.
Yeah.
And so I would just like to get your opinion. Kind of one of the other elements I'm going to look at is sort of non-traditional governance. So I'm looking at it from the top down, kind of institutional delivery, and then also non-traditional kind of bottom up delivery. I was just wondering what you perceive public participation and public ownership to be in terms of green infrastructure.
I think the public have a role, and they definitely do have a role. They don't know it yet, most of them. And that I see is one of the bigger parts of the 10,000 Rain Gardens initiative, is to educate the public. So from the bottom up, people, I think, a lot of people would be willing to do something if they knew what on earth it was all about. My ex-colleague in CPA, Brian Darcy, have you spoken to Brian?
I haven't spoken to him. I've sent him an email to try to get in touch.
Of course, you met him at the Sugars Group meeting.
Right.
And Brian, did he tell the story of, yes, I think he did, where there was a lady pushing a pram past a detention basin.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I'll just take a picture of the detention basin. Detention basin, we're getting, oh dear. And he said, he tried to explain himself a bit, and it's a community rain garden. Really? And that sort of attitude, now that's not always going to be the attitude, but that's a brilliant example of how the community as a whole will generally support rain gardens, will generally support SUDs, will generally support green infrastructure if they know what it is and the reason it's there and what it's to serve, as long as it's installed properly and doesn't get trashed. Which it will do in some places, and some communities are more likely to trash that. But without the education of what on earth a rain garden is, green infrastructure, SUDs is, it's more likely to be ignored or trashed than if a sign was up and this is part of your environment, you can take hold of this, you can look after this. And I think that's the way that we should be educating the public to let them understand a bit more that it's actually for them as well.
So that's kind of my follow-on question to that is, in terms of urban forestry, there does seem to be kind of evidence of the community kind of stepping forward with these friends of groups and kind of managing and taking over some of this urban green space. Is there that same opportunity there for SUDs, or is it such an engineering feature that it's good to get the public behind it and good to help them know that it's important to take care of it and to manage it, but in the long run, management should be exclusively with either a local authority or Scottish Water?
Two situations. If it's new build, you can't really go to the public and ask them what they want, so it's going to be designed by someone like MWH.
Right.
And that's at the client, the developer's agenda, and they will want somewhere nice so that they can sell houses that people want to buy and live somewhere nice. The less common scenario, and the much more important scenario now, because there's much more of it to be done, is retrofitting. So retrofitting into existing flooding situations in Glasgow and Edinburgh. And MWH could again install something that we think is fit and proper and would function properly, but may not be possibly that appealing. But what should be done, and is an important aspect of it in retrofitting, is to go to the communities that are in there and that will be served by this and say, what would you like?
Right.
Because from the outset, if they are asked that, maybe not from the very outset, But if they have an input to it, then it will become theirs and they will look after it, and that
Mhm.
happens, that does happen, and that's an important component. I don't think we should go to them with a blank bit of paper and say, that bit there floods, that's your house, what would you like? Come up with something, first of all, and then get them to sort of say, well, actually, if you do that, that means that wee Johnny will not get past on his bike. Well,
Yeah.
and, okay, well, if we did that, would wee Johnny get past, and all of a sudden it becomes wee Johnny's path, and his pals can, and they begin to look after it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the bottom-up approach is important, but it's much more important from the retrofitting aspect.
Right. Okay, so I also had some kind of more specific questions about my project as well. So I'm going to be kind of the second aspect of my project is going to be looking at case studies, and I was wondering if just off the top of your head you knew of any good case studies in the Edinburgh area.
For green infrastructure?
For green infrastructure, probably more specifically SEDS.
There are some. Are we including porous paving in this?
Right. I'm going to try to do probably those three different types, the ponds, swales, and porous paving, and then hopefully kind of an example of more successful management, an example of less successful management for each one.
There is a big pond that's been installed at, I think is it Stevenson College? Down at Grantham. If you can't find, I know the Stevenson College is up here at
I think I
Sentinel
have
as well.
come across that, yeah. Okay.
And that's quite a nice one actually. It's quite close to the coast, and they could have just done the discharge direct to the coast there, but they didn't because there's more land to go under, I think. Anyway, there's a nice pond there, and I seem to remember there being porous paving there as well, so you might get 2 hits with that. You go to any big supermarket car park, it's very likely that the car parking will be porous paving, so we could use that. There is one Lidl in Gorgie Road. It's either an Aldi's or a Lidl in Gorgie Road that has porous tarmac and has been in place for a long time actually, and didn't work very well because it's tarmac, the pores clogged, blinded and blocked up, and that might be an interesting study. I'm sure Kate might know a bit more about that one. There's also a housing estate, a residential housing estate on the edge of Edinburgh, and I could point to it in a map, but I can't remember the name of it. I'll email you.
Yeah, I was just going to say I might just follow up with you in the email if that's okay.
And basically there's houses around it, a bit of green space in the middle. It's one of my fellow consultants in WSP actually lives in the estate, and it must be getting on for 10 years old as well, and they had a swale in it. They went through, it looks great on paper, doesn't look that great actually when you go and see it, and it's interesting to know what it's doing now. It's not a roadside swale, but it's a swale within the green infrastructure, within the green open space there. It's not Liverton. It's. I'll get back to you.
I was just going to say, if you're okay with it, I'll follow up with
sure.
you with any email.
And if there are any more, email me and I'll try and think of some more. There will be others.
And then if it's okay, I might also email you. The other aspect is I've actually brought my contact list with me, but I'm also going to be trying to speak to more kind of top-down stakeholders in terms of SUDS and green infrastructure in general. And kind of, I think the main people that are missing from this are developers and scouts. I kind of want to get the developers, and so I'm going to try to contact Homes for Scotland,
Okay.
and then I was wondering if you knew of any developers that are particularly either champions or especially contentious when it comes to implementing SUDS and are just doing the absolute bare minimum. And then also if you knew of anyone, any representatives within Scouts that might be useful to speak to. And again, this can all be in a follow-up email. If I'm really pushing.
Okay. Okay. Scots. You said Scots. You mean the Society of Chief Officers?
Right. Right. And I saw that there was a kind of a round table that was chaired by Scout author, and I saw that Ron Jack seemed to be kind of the host for Scotland.
Unfortunately, Ron died last year.
Oh no.
Yeah. He's a great guy, quite vociferous, a good guy to have on your side, a wrong guy to have opposite the table, and when I was in Safeway, he was always on the other side. He's very good representative. He was basically the technical representative from the SUDS Working Party. Ron died last year, worked for the Walker Group, and he is kind of succeeded by a chap called Norman Kidd. And Norman is one of the techie directors within the Walker Group. I'm not sure if Norman would be willing to speak to you, but there's no harm in asking. And there is also a guy called Tom Mitchell on the SUDS Working Party as well. I think you can take their names, but please don't contact them directly. I will ask them if it's all right to give them your name.
Sure.
And you can ask me that in the email as well. But
Absolutely.
I'll just email Marvin and Tom.
And so would those two be good kind of for the developer's point of view?
Absolutely. They are the people we want to speak to, definitely. They are both on the technical committee of Homes for Scotland, and they're in with the wood. They will give a very honest opinion.
Okay.
One of Brian Darcy's students, in fact, you met him, he was at the Sugar Group, James Travers.
Oh yeah, sure.
You should speak to him. James is a senior engineer with Taylor Wimpey. He's doing his Masters on SUDS at Abertay, and he may well be willing to speak to you. He will give you a very honest opinion.
And he gave a presentation.
Yes. Yes, he did. He was the guy that had he was going to install 2 rain gardens at the show homes.
Right.
And if you need, have you got the presentations to push?
I don't think so. I don't think they've been posted up. But yeah, I'll put that in the email as well.
You haven't spoke to Brian yet, Brian?
I haven't. I sent him an email, and I need to send a follow-up just to keep poking him until he's...
Yeah, that's right. I know Brian, you'll find him hard to get hold of, but he'll be very supportive of what you're intending to do.
Right, good.
And he knows that you're speaking at the Green Infrastructure meeting in October.
Yes.
Yes, so are there any others, developers, whose names I know that you want to speak to? I think you should make a direct approach to Homes for Scotland and say you want to speak to someone technical, perhaps someone planning as well. There was a chap called Alan Lundmark who was a planner, and I know he's had bad health recently, so I don't know if he's still at Homes for Scotland or not. But it might be worthwhile speaking to. Certainly Homes for Scotland will tell you the developers, they represent developers, and they will give you their side of the story, which is essential, of course. But rather than the technical side of things, a planner's side of things would be equally important. So there's techie guys and planning people.
Perfect.
Okay.
And so then I just got one more kind of follow-up question for you, because you're only the 3rd person I've sat down with.
Okay.
And kind of being there from the beginning with Brian and kind of that original SEPA group, what kind of questions and who should I be approaching? What are the questions that you think is kind of one of the people that brought SUDS over to Scotland? what do you think are the most important kind of barriers to be addressing and questions I should be taking to people? It kind of sounds like from what you said earlier, maybe one of the primary things is going straight to the local authorities and saying, hey, what's kind of holding you back from dipping your toes in the water? Which I plan on doing, and I have a meeting set up with Julie Waldron, but
Good.
kind of what are the main barriers and what are the questions I should be really trying to get at?
The fundamental question, and it's whether you ask it first or last, I'm not sure, is who should own these, and why is there resistance and reticence to adopting them? Also, another question you should ask, I think, and Julie, the answer for Julie would be yes. And the question is, do local authorities know enough about SUDs? And they might. And do local authorities know about green infrastructure? And they do, but probably not the right departments know enough about it. And okay, here's one question. How much multifunctionality should SUDs attempt to achieve? Do you know what I mean by that?
I'm assuming that you mean not only kind of the attenuating water and treating water, but also bringing in that kind of amenity and biodiversity factors?
Yeah, and what else? How many other bits of multifunctionality are feasible? And that's a question to ask them. You can be looking at crime, antisocial behaviour, traffic calming, health, air quality, social well-being, community cohesion, lots of different things like that, and all from green infrastructure and SUDs. So it's not just about the three sides of the SUD triangle. There's something like 14 or 15 beneficial sectors, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tool coming out. When are you to submit?
August 20th.
All right, that's very precise. What time?
Got it written down somewhere.
You may be lucky then. There is a thing called the BAST tool coming out from Syria. Do you know Syria?
Right. Yeah. They and that's kind of what they were looking at for SUDs, the legacy SUDs before Sewers for Scotland too. They were using some Syria best practices.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. No. So Syria Construction Industry Research and Information Association, and they produce supporting guidance documents, tools, and the like for all sorts of things: tower cranes, sea defences, drainage, flooding, SUDs, very big in SUDs. And they will be delivering towards the end of July, so it might just be enough time, and no doubt it will be a wee bit late, the BAST tool, B-E-S-T. Benefits of SUDs tool is what it's titled. There was an A in there, I think it's an assessment, that made it the BEAST tool, and people thought, oh, wrong name there. Although it was a bit of a beast. BAST tool's a better profile to give it, I think. And within that, it's an economic tool, basically, and allows you to install a SUDS pond, let's say, and I don't know the workings of it. I've got a draft version of it. I've really not looked at it properly. But there's different things, different components. Will the pond provide air quality benefits? Is there a crime benefit that can be attributed to it? And all sorts of different things. I can't send you the beta version of it, but it's likely it'll come out at the end of July. So note to Tim. Look out on the Syria website for the BAST tool and see where it's released, because that will be. I mean, don't think Kate's head of that. It'd be quite nice to tell her about it.
Put something in there, right? No. Yeah.
And that'll be hot off the press for your masters. So
and I don't know if you know, but is that Paul Schaefer out of Syria that's working on that?
Right. Okay. It's actually my colleague at MWH who's writing the tool, or the main author of the tool, Chris Digman. And Chris says it's the end of July it's coming out. And if he says end of July, it's likely to be the end of July, but often these things get put back up.
Right. And there's no way I can steal the beta version from you.
If I'll ask Chris. We've given it to Glasgow City Council because we want to use them as a case study within the guidance of it.
Sure.
Based for Tim.
I know we're quickly running out of time here, but just one kind of follow-on question to that. I saw that you were there right at the very beginning with Suds for Roads as well. Kind of what do you perceive to be the hierarchy of guidance, and is it too complicated right now because they have these Suds for Roads for kind of geared towards the local authorities, and they have Scottish Waters kind of coming up with Sewers for Scotland 3. What do you perceive to be like kind of what's most important on the ground in terms of guidance?
The Suds for Roads was produced between Scots and the Suds Working Party. Scots are now producing their own roads development guide. It's out, you'll be able to download it, it's quite big and is aimed at roads. There's a good deal of it about, certainly Suds doesn't really focus much on green infrastructure. It's the National Roads Development Guide. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll send you the link.
Okay.
And that's what, because it's written by the Scots group, more of the Scots representatives will use that. However, I've heard that not even half the local authorities are using it so far. So, it's something. So there's that complication. Suds for Roads came out 7 years ago. NRDG is out this year, I think, much newer, and there's a wee bit of conflict between what they should be using, what they might want to use. I see that as a wee bit of a nuisance. There's far too much guidance out there. I think there should be a definitive place to go to use a document to read, kind of thing.
For Suds or for green infrastructure in general?
Well, for Suds for roads in particular, I'm talking about them.
Right.
And people who are just Googling this, a roads engineer, good roads engineer, they know about roads and drainage and stuff like that, but they know about Suds. Well, where would I go? And, there's lots of things, and it's a bit messy, I think.
Right.
But this NRDG has the potential to become the go-to thing.
For both Suds
Yeah.
for Roads, and then would Scottish Water be using something similar to that? Or would Sewers for Scotland 3 kind of complement?
Sewers for Scotland 3 is their document. Sewers for Scotland 4 is not that far away, I'm told. Sewers for Scotland 2 came out in 2007, and it took 3 years to come out, but it came out in 2007, and only now is Sewers for Scotland 3 out, only in March, so it's taken, 8 years. But Sewers for Scotland 4 won't be that long, and they've said, for example, Barb was talking about taking on swales and the like, so there is a growing willingness, there appears to be a growing willingness within Scottish Water to broaden their horizons. There's people beginning to
Yeah, at the time. Okay. Well, perfect. Well, thank you for